Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Talk the Ring Show. If you do not know who I am, then that means you are not subscribed. And if you are not subscribed, you're going to be missing so many great episodes. So take your finger and hit that subscribe button because it's sitting right there and it doesn't cost you anything. But it's been a long day, guys. I'm tired, but we're going to get right into today's episode. Let's give a warm welcome to our guest, Logan Cruz.
Hello,
How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
That's good. I'm great. So, like we kind of said beforehand, it's really laid back. It's super easy. We always start with who or what got you into wrestling.
So I think it's very similar to the story that a lot of people will tell, where you grew up watching wrestling, and then as you got older, you kind of realized, oh, there's schools for this. Like it's one of those things where growing up, you heard about the Hart Family Dungeon, you knew about like the WWE Performance Center and all these places, but you never realized just how many places there are locally. So I did a little bit of research. I found the wrestling lab. At the time, it was called the Lethal Academy. Uh, and yeah, the rest is history. I had a small background in sports. I did some boxing, but wrestling has always been, where it's at for me. It's been my passion and my escape. So I was like, you know what? Let's do it. So
Okay. So, was there like a certain moment that like you knew like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do or this is what I want to do?
it's always been in the back of my mind. Like growing up, my sister was in she was in theater and all that stuff, so she was always very much so the spotlight, and I was very soft spoken. So in the background, I was like, you know what, I got to find my own thing. And growing up, my mom was always the one who, my family aren't wrestling fans, or they weren't before I got into it, but my mom was always the one who, would sit down and watch the pay-per-views with me, or when they came to town, she was the one who was with me. And even at like 7 or 8 years old, I would look to her and I'd be like, you know what, I'm gonna do that someday. So after years and years, finally I got a steady job, got out of high school, and I said, I'm going to do this. So I found the school, put up the money, and I think my whole family was like, oh God, he's really doing it. Because like back in the day, I used to cry getting up on stage for talent shows and stuff like that. Like I was not somebody who you would expect. Like I loved wrestling, but you never expected me to go up on stage or go out in front of people. So they were all like, what the heck is going on? But I was like, I got to do it. You got to push
Right.
yourself.
No, yeah, I think that's the same reaction like my parents and family would have because like I have anxiety and like all this stuff at the shows. I'm like, oh my god, I'm so nervous. Like because I have a table and little kids come and make posters. Like it's not nerve wracking, but like still like all those amount of people because there's only
Yeah.
so much people. And I'm like, oh my god, what if I do or say something wrong? And like I'm a huge wrestling fan. Well, I say it all the time. I want to be a manager. I want to yell at people. I mean, I do that now, but I want to like be more involved and yell at them. So
Oh, you'd
like
make a great manager. Yeah, you absolutely.
be like, well, if I'm a fan and I'm crazy and loud now, let me just switch over into that and yell at them that way.
Yeah, may as well get paid doing it.
Exactly, exactly. So obviously you had like your time on AEW with people that know. How was that experience for you?
Oh, that was awesome. It was a very laid back experience. You I had previously done some extra work for WWE during the pandemic, and that was very much so like, you come in, this is your area, you stay here, you speak when spoken to, which isn't a bad thing. It's just it's a different environment. It's much more it's just different. But in AEW, you come in, you do have a separate locker room for the extra talent, but then when you're backstage, it's all intermingled. They have a little area, at least back when they were still doing it at the sound stage in Orlando. You would go and sit, and you would talk to a lot of the talent. Uh, and I think it might be because a lot of those guys who are on Dark and are signed with AEW will still work some of those higher level independent shows. So there's a chance that a lot of the extra talent already knows that the AEW talent. But then you see people like Arn Anderson walking around backstage, and Tony Khan he has the gorilla position, and he's at every single Dark taping. So it was surreal, but it was a ton of fun, and it was the crowd was really, really good. It was surprising because we've done my tag team and my faction and we've done quite a few shows up in Orlando, so there's some crossover with the audience. So we go out there and people are like, "Oh, we know them," and we're like, "Yeah, you do, yeah, yeah." So, it's always a good time. I'm hoping to go back when they come to Tampa in August.
No, yeah, and like that's great. And like we say, I kind of say it all the time on here. Like both AEW and WWE are good. They both just kind of have like their thing.
Yeah.
Like AEW is more like flexible and you can still do like the independent shows, while WWE is more like uptight and like you do this, like you said. But since you had your experience with both, if both of them asked you at the exact same time to be on their full-time roster, which one would you pick?
It depends on who's offering me more money. That's. I feel like I could. I would enjoy both. You know, I don't have an issue with either one. Like I haven't gone to one of them and like, oh, this was so much better than the other one. But you know, it's just very, very different. The big thing that I think a lot of people really like about AEW is, one, it is, you still do get to work those smaller independent shows, but yeah, no, it just depends on which one gives me more money. I watch both products. You know, I'll probably end up in Impact. You
know, right? Like not even in there, but like yeah, we'll just end up there.
Yeah.
So, if you had to like say, what is your favorite thing about wrestling for you?
Oh, storytelling. It's got to be that. You know, there's on the independent level, it can be very difficult just because there are, you know, a lot of the shows will run once a month, and a lot of the people who go to those shows they're not too involved with the social media aspect of it. Like they'll follow you, but you know, they're not checking the shows every week to see, okay, what's the storyline here? But when you do get to a point where you're with a show that runs consistently and you can tell like a good long-term story, there's no better feeling. It's because, especially when you're first starting out, you have all these ideas. Like I'm sure we've all fantasy booked ourselves in our head and we've thought, oh, this is what I would do. But when you're first starting out, you show up, you do whatever the promoter asks you to do, and you say thank you for the opportunity, and you go about your way. It's usually not until, you know, a few years in that you're able to, you know, really start giving your creative input and saying, and they start putting you in those high-profile storylines. But once you're allowed to express those ideas and it works, there's no better feeling. And then the same goes with like just regular in-ring storytelling, because, you know, if you go to a show for the first time, maybe it's your first appearance there, crowd may have no idea who you are, maybe they've only seen you on the poster, but if you can go out there and you can have a match, and without having to cut a promo, without having to, you know, get cheap heat or whatever, if by the end of the match they're either on their feet cheering for you or they want to, you know, rip you apart, then that's so satisfying. But yeah, we've got some good places down in Florida that have allowed me to do some good storytelling, so that's.
Okay. So you said like about the crowd ripping you apart. Does that mean you're more of a heel or are you a face?
It depends. A lot of people would probably say that I'm more of a heel just because I have a very punchable face. But I think at the end of the day, I'm going to do whatever it calls for, and I've done both. You know, I have 2 championships right now. One of them I'm the top baby face. The other one I'm the top heel in the company. Not top, but I'm up there. So it just depends on the situation. But, you know, if you need me to make a kid cry, I'll make a kid cry. But if you need me to go out there and kiss a baby, I'll kiss a baby. You know, it just depends.
So does one come easier than the other, or is it like it depends on your mood?
It just depends, you know, because I think
Well, let me rephrase that, because a lot of people say being a babyface is harder than being a heel. Does that apply to you, or?
I don't think so. A good character shouldn't have to change too much for heel versus babyface. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of how you approach your matches and how you approach your promos. But your personality shouldn't change, you know?
Yeah.
Like heel Triple H is more or less the same as babyface Triple H. He's just not, you know, being a menace to society when he's a good guy. But he's still, you know, intense. He's still a tough guy. You know, it's, you know, you just got to change little things here and there. But I do enjoy being a heel just because seeing those, you know, making grandmas cry and getting chased out in the parking lot is always fun. So that's.
No, I like it's good to have that like fan wrestler interaction where the fans are like, well, I know you're not actually like this, but I'm still just going to feed it to you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I just had a match at a place called POW. which is another great place that we do a lot of storytelling, and they've really given my faction and I the opportunity to kind of spread our creative wings. But we had a 3-on-3 match with the Cheese, who's another amazing. Oh my! If you haven't heard of him, you got to get him on your podcast. I 100% recommend.
Oh, okay.
It's exactly what you think it is. He's just the Cheese. Daniel Starling, who's a guy who we came up with, an incredible wrestler, and Jay Lethal. He was in the match as well. By the end of the match, our female referee, Ref Julie, I had pushed her onto her butt, and I remember my mom was in the front row, and I pushed her, and I made eye contact with my mom, and my mom stood up, and I was like, "Whoa, wait, just hang on!" But I had to be careful going to the parking lot because they were not happy with me. She ended up giving me a spear, but it is what it is. But things like that, the crowd, everybody got on their feet. There's no better feeling in the world, but there's something so good about being bad.
And I think that's also where the storyline plays in, because as long as you have something that draws the crowd in, because if you're just okay, well, we got wrestler A fighting wrestler B, it's okay, well, we've seen it a couple times, we just need something a feud going on, and
right,
that's what
and it can be done with one-offs, but you got to know your audience. If you go out to a fair crowd where it's a bunch of kids, there are some places where some shows it'll be you're here for the wrestling, but there are other shows fair shows where you're there for the fair and there just happens to be wrestling. You can get that same reaction, but you have to realize that you can't go out there and do 5 minutes chain wrestling, and you gotta. Those kids want to see somebody get chopped in the face or chopped in the chest really hard, and you got to know your audience. So if you can reel them in, then you can do the stuff that you want to do. But it's just about knowing your audience. But it does make it so much easier and it's so much better when you have that ongoing storyline, and people know as soon as you walk out, that guy right there, he's enemy number one.
Yeah, I'm out in Pennsylvania based. So there's a wrestler out here. His name is Rembrandt, or the Rembrandt, and he's supposed to be a heel. And I love him to death. But now the crowd loves him. I'm I guess I'm gonna have to start booing you because this was supposed to be my thing, and now people are starting to cheer you. It's not working out. I can't. We just can't.
People love a bad guy. They do. It always comes back around.
With him, they hated him. But now since I started cheering him, now everyone cheers him. I'm well, I'm going to start booing you to transition you into that heel again.
Mm-hmm. They're taking your lead. That's why you'd be a great manager.
Exactly. Probably. So my dad's in the chat. He's chanting your name because that's what he does. And then he goes and says, "Mama was ready to spank that ass."
Oh, yeah. I was more afraid of her than I was of Jay Lethal in that moment.
She was I raised you better than that. Mom, listen.
It's I promise it comes back around. Don't get
gotta get my ass beat by her. So how long would you say you trained before you actually got a legit match in front of a crowd?
Ooh, so I was in there probably a year and a half, or no, probably closer to a year. Just because my class that I was with was one of the first classes that they had done. So a lot of the things that we learned in beginners are now taught in advanced class. So it probably could have been earlier, but it's just the structure was still getting figured out as far as curriculum and things like that. But we were there, it started off 3 nights a week for 3 hours every day, or 2 or 3 hours every day. Eventually moved up to 4 days a week for 3 hours every day in this little hot shack in the middle of Florida. But we were there for months, and then we moved into a nicer facility. And then I debuted in April of 2019. So yeah, it was about a year and a few months. But yeah, we were the guinea pigs. They were what can we do with this curriculum? Before they were we can probably save some of this stuff for the advanced class.
No, yeah, I get it, because I'm friends with so many wrestlers. I'm they tell me about training all the time, oh, we have to do this and that. I'm I'll give that to you, but I don't think that's for me.
I don't blame them.
But 6-year-old me would have been hell yeah, we're gonna become a wrestler, and now no, I'm Like I see the moves and stuff. Like I'm gonna leave it to you guys. You do great at it, but me, no. Let me just use what I already have, like my voice, and be like. I mean, even as a manager, though, you still got to learn how to take certain bumps and.
Yeah, and I think especially for you, if you were to go through, maybe not a full beginners, but something where you can go in and learn to take the ropes, learn the formula of a match, things like that. It'll make you a more effective manager, just because one, you have more of an appreciation for what's going on in the ring, and two, you'll know more about the inner workings of how it's being done. So you're like, okay, well, here's how we sprinkle in a little bit of Harley to make it better.
I'm gonna start saying that. We're like, you know what that needs? We just gotta sprinkle a little Harley right there.
You make shirts, I want royalties.
Exactly. So you kind of said what your favorite thing about wrestling was. So what would you say is the hardest part for you?
For me, it's promoting myself in social media. I'm really bad about that. My partner Wheezy, I'm fortunate enough to be with somebody on a team with somebody who is really, really good at promoting us online. You know, a lot of the out-of-state bookings, come from him reaching out to a lot of promoters and stuff. Just because I don't know what it is, but when it comes to it, I'm like, I don't want people to know about my life, but I'm also just bad about like taking pictures when I'm at shows. And it could be as easy as like taking a clip from a video that's already been posted and just posting it on my thing. But I don't know why I'm so bad at that. But it's something I'm getting better at, and especially now because I do a couple things outside of wrestling that are, I have to promote on my own, so I have to, be better at that. But yeah, that's one of the hardest things, because you can be the best wrestler in the world is probably somewhere in the Midwest who no one's ever heard of because he's not good at social media, but those people who we've all seen those wrestlers on TV where it's like, yeah, he's good, but like I've seen better wrestlers. It's because they're just better at promoting themselves, and they're, good at.
Oh, no, froze. I think we lost him. Yeah, we lost him, guys. I mean, this happens all the time. We have an episode. Someone's always freezing. But he'll be back, hopefully. But obviously, there we go. Oh, or not. Like I said, guys, if you aren't following on Instagram, I will be taking a little break from the podcast for a week and a half. I will be back. I'm not just completely ditching you guys. I mean, he was ditching us, but now he's back. You're good.
Okay. I don't know what happened.
It happens all the time. Someone's always having some sort of problem. It's okay.
I have a toaster for an internet router, so it's probably that.
Oh, okay. Interesting. But back to like the whole promoting thing, like I get it. There's so many like social medias now. Like we got Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and like that was like me trying to freaking vlog at this past show. I was like, I can't do this. I'm too much into the wrestling. I'm like, oh wait, I got a vlog, and so I got like a 10-minute, not even a 10-minute vlog. I'm like, well, it's something to post. And
yeah,
like,
it's something, and it gets it gets better and better.
Yeah.
I think that's my issue, is that when I post something, I want to refine it, I want to edit it, I want to give it a good caption, but that's good. I think like the people who are really good at it, they'll have like one or two really, really good, well thought out edited posts like a week, but the rest of it is just, stuff to get their name out there. So it's just a matter of consistency with that.
But, oh yeah, most definitely. Well, like everything, just following helps. Posting like you're gonna be on a podcast or a show you're gonna be at, or just a show in general.
Mm-hmm.
The little things.
Yeah.
So, how do you feel about like hardcore deathmatch kind of matches?
I think it's got its place. I think it can be done well. It's not for me. I've done. For me, it's got to be something that's a culmination of a storyline. Like I've done street fights, I've done hardcore, but it's always at the end of a storyline as a blow-off to make it mean more. Nothing against people who do it. It works and it makes a ton of money. Like it makes so much money. So it can't be wrong. And wrestling is subjective, so it's there for people. And you can find good, especially at the higher levels, because you'll see people who are wrestling in backyards, hitting each other with light tubes, just for the sake of hitting each other with light tubes. But there's some people on those higher levels that do it, and you watch it and you're like, okay, they are telling a story. There is psychology in this. They are making things count. I think one of the biggest issues, especially on the lower independent levels, is if you do a death match, you immediately get pigeonholed into only doing death matches. So you got to be really careful about where you do them. Like I've known people who are, they wanted to be, like the next Bret Hart, and they'll do one death match, and now they're only getting booked for death matches. And it's like, man, that's what you want to do. It's what you want to do, but you got to be careful with it.
Oh yeah, I think that's where the storyline and like the character plays in. Like, if it's something you want to do, go for it. But
yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, the one I did that was like an actual like death match. I took a bump on thumbtacks and I took a bump on Legos. The Legos were infinitely worse than the thumbtacks because you have so much adrenaline. The thumbtacks are like that big and they go into you, you don't even feel it. But the Legos, there's no give. It was horrendous. I took the bump and I was like ready to cry.
I mean, if nobody's ever stepped on a Lego, that probably is 10 times worse, because once you step on a Lego, that's just stepping on a Lego, but your whole body's like getting thrown on Lego.
Yeah, no, thank you. Never again.
I mean, that's different. I've never heard Legos, which is interesting.
Yeah, he was sadistic. I don't know why.
I mean, like, they're okay. I'm going to be that fan that's like, I don't know. Well, how would the wrestlers feel? Like, it's great. You guys are loving it. The crowd is loving it. But me, I'm like, oh my God, are they okay? Do they need a doctor? Like, I'm not a doctor, but I can see what I can do.
I'll tell you what, though. It's the biggest pain in the butt when they don't put that match on last, and then there's thumbtacks and glass and stuff in the ring, and then you have to go out next, and you're like, come on, guys. Like, I didn't sign up
because
for
now
this.
I get the aftermath of it, and like, oh, well, I'm just having a normal match.
I'm trying to work a wrist lock, and now there's thumbtacks everywhere. Like
I got Legos here. Like, no. I get it. So, like, with that being said, how do you feel about intergender matches, or is it not your thing?
I think they have a place. I personally don't have an issue with them, just because it's a weird thing to where part of you doesn't want to say, part of you, there's some promoters who are like, I don't want to send that message to where, but it's
no explanation, but this is how
yeah, no explanation. Yeah, but it's just, they went through the same training that we did. They worked just as hard. They took the same bumps. They learned how to do it just as safely and how to, make it look just as real and as physical and intense as we did. And I feel like if I were to say to you, especially because at the end of the day, it is entertainment. If I were to say to you, no, you can't hang, that's disrespectful to you, because it's you went through the same thing I did. You put in the same work, paid your money to train. So why shouldn't you,
oh yeah.
But when it comes to, trying to suspend disbelief, I can see why people would say that's not the best thing to be showing in advertising, just because if a kid sees it who maybe isn't aware that it's entertainment, they're going to think, okay, well, this is okay then. But I mean, at the same time, is it any worse than two men punching each other in the face? Like, I don't know.
Exactly. I think parents have to have that talk with kids if they're going to take them to these shows and be like, okay, so what you're about to see. Like, my parents were like, okay, you've seen it on TV, this is it, and that's it. Yeah. But now I'm like, hell yeah, I can't even miss a show. I'm here every time.
Right.
I like when people say, oh my God, wrestling's fake. I'm like, bro, you better have me on a rant, because
Yeah, no, there's a lot of words for wrestling, but fake isn't one of them.
Exactly. My thing is like, majority of these female wrestlers get trained by the males, or they train with the males, so it's equal enough to just let them go.
Yeah, and I think because a lot of the times I live 10 minutes away from the school, so whenever a new class starts, I'm usually there with Jay or with whoever is training that night, and I'm kind of like if they, I'm the bump monkey or like the right hand if they need to go in and demonstrate something. So whenever we start doing the practice matches, I usually get paired up with uh, with a lot of the girls who are training, just because they know I'm not dangerous, but I'm also not going to treat you any different than I would, if you were a guy. You went through this. I'm going to give you a chop. I'm going to give you a body slam. I'm not, the same way I would. So it's just about finding a balance, because you shouldn't. One of my favorite matches that my tag partner had is against this girl, this woman, female wrestler named Lexi Gomez, who is an incredible female wrestler. If you watch that match, it is not an intergender match. It is just a great wrestling match. And I think he sold for her, she sold for him. They had a great back and forth. It's just an excellent wrestling match, and that's how it should be. So yeah, that's my take on it, I suppose.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I get it.
Yeah.
And like that's what I think. Some people are like, females can't do what males do. I'm like, that's like saying wrestling's fake. I could go like that. Rembrandt being a heel, and like, no, I could go rant for hours. Like, you'll just be like, shut up. We get what you're trying to say, but I'm like, no, I can't. I gotta keep to get my point across.
Yeah.
So if a younger fan came up to you and was like, I want to do exactly what you're doing, what advice can you give them?
First, start going to the gym. Before you even start looking for a school, find a gym. I think a lot of people don't realize the amount of effort and the amount of cardio and strength that you need to have for this. Because if you run 60 minutes on a treadmill, you could still get blown up doing 12 minutes in the ring, just because it's such a different kind of cardio. I would recommend finding a school with a style that works for you. I know that there's a lot of schools, like, for example, there's some that for months or for weeks before you even step foot in the ring, you're doing 500 Hindu squats outside of the ring. You're doing laps around the place. And then after that, then they'll let you get in the ring, and then they make you run drills until you throw up. And then, there are some places that are still very old school, where the mentality used to be, we're going to beat this guy up until they stop coming. Or if they keep coming, then maybe we'll teach them some stuff. I will die on this hill. The Wrestling Lab is the best school in Florida. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We've got a whole bunch of different people who train. Jay Lethal, who's been on TV, David Mercury, who is a local legend, Big Con, formerly Con from the Ascension, who worked in WWE, Matt Seidel. And then if they can't teach it to you, they've got a connection somewhere to bring somebody in who will teach it to you. And from day one, Jay tells you, he's like, I encourage you we'll do drills and stuff. We'll do blow up drills, but it's not to the point where you want to puke and not come back. It's ring conditioning, but it's not a punishment. It's not torture. So Jay says, you need to go to the gym and you need to work out, but I'm not going to hold your hand through this. The first thing that they teach you in that school, probably the first week, is, lockups, starting with chain wrestling, stuff like that. They're jumping into it. You're there to be a wrestler, and there's all different kinds of physiques and abilities in wrestling. So they'll tell you it's going to help you a lot if you go to the gym, but they're not going to hold your hand and make you do it. And if you can't hang, you're going to weed yourself out. So It's just about finding a place with that culture and that mentality that works for you.
That's what's great about wrestling now. Like, there's so many different schools, like, everywhere, and like there's so many shows. So even if you're a fan, there's like, oh well, there's a show this week, and there's always a show every week. And like, that's the good thing about wrestling.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's I always do recommend joining a school that has a show attached to it, because they're like student showcases, things like that. Just because when you first start getting into the business, it can be very difficult to branch out and find those other shows to start working on. So I remember when we first started working, we were told, yeah, you guys will probably work 12 shows this year, once a month at the school's promotion that was attached at the time. It's not anymore. We were lucky enough to have a lot of different people who had come before us who had those connections. So we ended the year with like 80 matches or something like that. It was ridiculous. But that's a big plus. And then 2, find a place that's passionate about wrestling, because there are some places that say, oh, you want to be a wrestler? Give me, $3,000. Here's how you do a lockup. All right, get out of my school. Jay Lethal and the Lethal Lab and the Wrestling Lab, you pay your tuition, and then you are a student there for life. If you come to them and you say, hey, I want to learn something and I need help with this, even if you're out of beginners or you haven't been there in a while, they're like, yeah, come on by, we'll work on it, whatever. They're, as long as you put in the work, they're going to put in the work with you, and because they want to see you succeed. They've made their money in wrestling. This is something that they do as a passion project. It's not something that they're doing to make money off of. I mean, the money's good, but yeah.
Yeah. And like that's kind of the conversation I had with my mom earlier. I'm like, well, I need to find myself a hobby. And I was like, well, sleeping, I love doing that. And she's like, no, like
Amen.
the actual one. And then I was like, well, I always wanted to start training. And then she's like, I think if you take one bump, you'd be done after. I'm like, yeah, I'm one of those. I'll be like, oh, my back hurts, my knee hurts, everything hurts.
You could do it.
I don't know, man. I think I'm just going to take my voice, my crazy, strong voice, and just stick it on the manager side. And leave it to you. Be like, so there's this guy, like, do you want him in a death match? Okay, let me just send him your way.
Like, whoa.
Be like, he talked to me. He said it was totally fine. He would love to be in it. So just DM him and I'm sure he'll say yeah.
Oh, God.
You're like, this girl.
If I start getting DMs after this, we're gonna have to have some words.
Be like, I know you did it. I know it was you.
Did you sprinkle some Harley in this? Is that what?
Yeah, I circled some Harley on that. So do you have merch? And if so, where can people purchase it?
I do. Right now, I'm actually wearing the Gifted shirt. I'm repping the team. Oh, God, how does the camera work? So that's me. No, that's me. This is Leroy Shogun, and that's Wheezy T. He's got an inhaler because Wheezy. We have an online store, or they can message me directly. I have my own merchandise. I don't have it here, and I don't want to leave you down. But I got my own stuff, a couple different designs. Yeah, if you reach out to us, or if you see us at a show, we've always got it on hand. Yeah.
So is there anything you do before you come out the curtain, a certain routine?
Oh, I always come out talking trash. I come out, find the camera that's pointed at hard cam. My boys will take off on either side, and I'm looking down the camera. I'm like, talking my trash. We do have an entrance pose that we do in the ring, but it's just feeling out the crowd. If they're sitting on their feet, I'll jump over the barricade and walk out into the crowd and be like, y'all better get up. Like, this is, I'm not here to wrestle in front of a silent crowd. So, it's those little things that give them energy, but just we try not to choreograph it, too much. We don't come out like a dance routine and we're like, hey.
No, I get that. Like, especially with the crowd being quiet. This past weekend I had a show as PPW in Pennsylvania, Slatington, whatever. And it was like so hot. I'd say it was almost 100 degrees in the building. And I get it. Like when it's hot, you don't want to like scream or anything. But there's me. I'm like, I'm still going hard. The crowd's like, how are you doing this? I'm like, I don't even know. It just comes out. And I'm like, the wrestlers, there was a match. It was Bro Keller versus Miles Hawkins. And I was like, let's go, bro. And then you suck, Miles. And they were like, we hear you. We are trying to have our match. I was like, oh, okay. Sorry.
But the crowd, if there's someone like you in the crowd, they'll follow your lead. So that's, it's always good to have.
No, yeah. Like what me and my dad, I think I'm louder than my dad and he's loud. But like when me or my dad starts the chants and like everyone starts picking up on it, I'm like, exactly. Come on, y'all. It may be hot, but like there's a bar. Go get a drink and you'll be fine.
Get you some ice and then come on back. We're going to have a good time.
Yeah, we're going to have a blast. So have you ever sustained an injury that made you think twice about continue wrestling?
So I've been pretty fortunate to not have too many injuries. I did recently have an injury that I didn't take any time off for that I probably absolutely should have. I actually dislocated my elbow completely in a match, tore both ligaments on either side and fractured my a bone in my forearm. But so it happened in a match where I got thrown out of the ring and I missed the ropes and the side to post myself and just went straight to the floor. Elbow popped clean out. I got in the fetal position and put my hand between my legs and tried to like pull it to pop it back in, but I couldn't. The medic came over. I told him, I was like, hey, look, you need to pop this in right now before my adrenaline wears off, because I couldn't even feel it. I was like, I know it's because there was that nasty crunch sound, and then I could see it. So he popped it back into place. I moved it a couple times, and I said, okay, and I slid back in the ring and finished the match, and then drove 2.5 hours home. But I went to the ER that night. They said I had torn both the ligaments and a fracture, but then I had a match the next weekend, so it was not. I probably should have taken more time off for that. But you know, it is what it is. I had great range of motion in it, so you know, it is what it is, and I can structure a match around that to not have to, because I was wrestling people I trusted, thankfully. So it's not like I was facing some guy I've never met before. I don't know if he's going to take care of me. But one of the guys, I told him like, hey, you know, I hurt my arm. We got to work around this. And he's like, yeah, no problem. We won't even touch it. Won't do anything with it. Even where you need to take a face bump to post, you know. So still probably should have taken time off, but yeah. But other than that, no, not really. There was one time I dislocated my finger in a match, and I put it on the ring post and just slammed it back in, and then never got it checked out. But
so you're one to like just not go to the doctors and get things checked after you get injured?
No, not at all. This one I did just because it was hard to ignore. But yeah, no. Most things I'm like, yeah, well, whatever. Like, I'll live. Rub some dirt on it.
Oh, okay. So my dad's like, I'm louder than you, Harley. I don't know, man. I mean, because he's a man, so he has like a man voice. But for me, I don't know.
You got to invest in a megaphone, like Jimmy Hart.
Yeah, probably. I get that all the time. People are like, well, you're allowed the way it is, so just might as well get a megaphone.
May as well. It'd be part of the gimmick.
Right? So do you have like a dream venue or a dream place that you wish to wrestle in?
Oh, man. I mean, everyone dreams about wrestling at Madison Square Garden. I'd like to do a match in the Tokyo Dome for New Japan. I think that would be a ton of fun. A dream venue, man, that's a hard one. Probably here in Tampa, just so that all my family could come to a big one, like, and be in that environment. Because it's one thing to go to an indie show, but to be 12,000 people screaming and, you know, having that experience, and then if I'm in that ring for that, my family gets to experience that. I think that would be ideal. But yeah, there's a lot of beautiful. The bigger the better, you know.
No, yeah. And like I hear all the time that there's like wrestling shows at fairs. And I have not yet to go to one, but like that'll be it for me. That'll be like, this is the best wrestling show ever.
They can be interesting. They can be very
I mean, because you could just be on the Ferris wheel and just mind your business. Be like, what are they doing down there? Are they wrestling? Are they fighting?
Did just get punched? What is happening down there?
Or that would be me. Be like, hold on, I'll cheer for you in a minute. Let me eat my deep fried Oreos.
Oh man.
No, that's great. So, has there ever been, with that being said, has there been a venue that you wrestled in? You were like, well, I really like this place, and I will wrestle here anytime I get the opportunity.
The best venue I've probably worked. Oh, you know what? We did a match up in Tennessee for SCI. And they had, it was just a high school, but the whole town was there. So that was really, really awesome as far as like environment in the crowd. But I feel like you could have done that same show in any venue, but just the people there are what made it so special. But as far as like a really nice venue, I've done one at the Egypt Shriner Center, which is like a big country club, nice, really big open bar, open ceilings. Really, really beautiful. But I run my own charity show down in St. Pete every year for Christmas. And we run at a place called Cage Brewing, and it's got it's a little hole in the wall place, but it's got this huge backyard garden, like beer garden, where they grow their own ingredients and stuff. And we pack that place out every year. So that's, I think, as far as having a special place in my heart, it's not anything crazy, but it's got a place in my heart.
Oh yeah, and like that's great. So do you like ever find yourself being a self-critic if you watch your matches back or your promos or anything?
Oh, absolutely. And if you have to be your own worst critic, because there are so many people that you'll ask them, hey, how'd I do? And they're like, oh yeah, great job. you have to be able to look at it and be like, ooh, I can't believe I did that. Like there's some matches that I can't even watch because I'm like, and it's, it's not indicative of you as a wrestler. Everybody has off nights, but man, me and my team will sit there and we'll watch it through once, take a break, come back, and then we'll pick it apart piece by piece by piece and just, everything that we can fix. And then there's sometimes we've even gone to the school and watched it bit by bit and seen what went wrong and sort of redo it in the ring just so that we can say, okay, here's how we need to do it from now on. But if you're not picking yourself apart every single time, then you got a problem. Same with promos. Every word, it's like, ooh, I could have said this in a different cadence. I could have put some more time in between this and that. I could have used this punchline instead. That's the only way to be the best.
Oh yeah, like I get that. I had a show in the beginning of the year that I did, and it was like so bad because it was me and my co-host at the time. She went her own separate ways. That's okay. But we had the show and like we were doing after-match interviews, and I was like, oh my God, we're gonna be so bad. Like, I don't know about her, but I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna be so bad. I'm gonna mess it up. And like majority of them I was okay. But then there was a certain one I was like, oh my God, I just like messed this all up. I shouldn't have said that. And like it was live, so there was no going back. I was like, oh, they seen it, that's it. And like that's sometimes how I am on here. I'm like, oh my God, did I really say that? I sounded like such a fangirl. What did I do?
And the craziest thing is that I can almost guarantee you nobody noticed it but you. But you got to be your own worst critic. And then just in case 1 in a million people, if there's one person who sees it, you've already corrected it, But that's the other thing. People will see your work and you'll be like, oh, I can't believe I did this. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, it looked fine. Like, sincerely. Like, what?
Oh, God. I still watch the clips back. So I'm like, oh my God, what was I thinking? Why did I say that?
No. I gotta watch it.
My dad goes and says, you did a great job, but I noticed Carly. LOL.
I knew.
I know where you messed up. Well,
oh, panic attack.
Be like, oh my God. It was an adventure that day. Like, I don't know how you guys get ready for a show, but when me and my co-host were like, okay, so we're gonna do our makeup, we're gonna eat breakfast, and we ended up she ate breakfast, but I was like, I can't eat breakfast because what if I go out there and die, and like what if I just throw up? I'm like, I can't do this.
Yeah, no, that's about on par with how wrestlers are.
No, and I think that's where like the anxiety comes in. Like when I become a manager, I'll be like, oh great, I feel it, but let me just go scream at people and I should be fine.
Yeah, the adrenaline hits you and it all goes away.
No, that's kind of what I do with my dad because I show he's like, go up to them, ask them to come on your podcast. I'm like, but I don't want to, and then I end up going to do it. I'm like
shaking the whole time, like, hello, sir.
You want to come on my podcast? And like not even speaking English. But do you have any upcoming shows people can find you at?
I do. We're going to be at Seminole Rec Center for POW this Saturday. We're facing a team called State Line, who are an older school of guys. And if we win, we get control of POW. So that'll be fun. I got the email invitation for AEW on the 2nd here in Tampa. Then I have Kingdom of Wrestling, Mayhem on Mills, Just Wrestling, couple great things. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll go on to after this post, I'll put in the comments some links to all the stuff like that so everyone can see them.
Okay. And so if people wanted to find you on social media, where can they find you at?
At Logan Cruz PW. Should be just about for everything. I have Instagram, Threads now, and Twitter. I barely use anything besides Instagram, but I'm trying to get better at that.
Okay. And if you guys want an easier way of doing that, his Instagram is linked down below. So you could just click that and it'll take you to that. And I'm sure he'll be posting shows and his merch and everything on there. But thank you so much for coming on. It was definitely, I love Diego Hill. I had him on yesterday, but he was quiet. And like his responses were so simple. I'm like, well, I like the conversation. I like it to keep going.
Oh, I'll talk forever. I'll sit here and tell you stories about working with Big Show and Ric Flair. I could talk your ear off.
Oh yeah, but thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was fun, and we'll probably have you on again sometime in the future.
Absolutely. maybe we'll get the whole gifted on here. We'll sit on
Exactly.
a big group podcast.
Yeah, right. We'll work it out. But thank you all, and I hope you have a great night. Bye.